Hi, class, and hello, professor. Today, I will be presenting my leadership interview that I had with a remarkable individual that I had the opportunity to learn from. And in this lesson, I'll be able to talk about all the things that I learned from my interviewee, and I was able to tie that into what we were learning in the class. So, this is my leadership interview lessons learned presentation by me, Isis. So I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Richard Schultz. He is the program chair at the University of Phoenix here in the Central Valley. He does overlook the Western region portion, and I picked him because in the beginning of the year, he had given me a lot of advice when it came to my career and my academics. Having that guidance was really important to me. And so, having a mentor was, I thought it was perfect for this presentation. And so, Dr. Richard Schultz serves in the U.S. Air Force from 1986 to 2003. He had then retired from the Air Force and became an office manager at Home Doctor from 2003 through 2004. He wanted more of a challenge, so he became the executive director for the village from 2006 to 2008. He then moved to become the medical program director for Heald College in Stockton, California from 2008 to 2015. When that college sort of ended, he had to find another career, another position. And that's when he applied to become the program chair and faculty supervisor at the University of Phoenix for the College of Health Professions. He's also the founding lead chapter advisor for the National Society of Leadership and Success at the University of Phoenix. It's also known as NSLS. It's a remarkable honor society. I'm also a part of it. And so it was really cool to see those ties to Dr. Schultz that I had. And that's part of a reason why I also decided to interview him. And yeah, I think. And so another reason why I really wanted to interview Dr. Schultz was because of his background. He was very well-rounded from, coming from the military to becoming to being in a leadership role at these various healthcare organizations, and then ultimately going into education where he can teach those people, teach individuals like me and others how to become a leader. And I think that's really interesting. And it kind of leads into our next section that we're going to find about purpose, your North Star, and everything like that. The questions that I had asked Dr. Schultz were: what inspired you to be a leader? What skills do you feel are critical for leaders to have in today's complex environment, especially in healthcare? What words of wisdom can you pass on to future healthcare leaders? How do you challenge people in higher positions while also maintaining a positive professional relationship with them? How do you continue to find career goals after reaching goals you have already accomplished in your career? How do you practice self-awareness in your leadership role? Why is it important to practice self-awareness? And lastly, why did you choose to be in the healthcare field, especially education, where you oversee future leaders? The reason I asked a lot of these questions was it tied into the topics that I will discuss in this presentation, but also I kind of wanted to know for myself as well. And I really wanted to know what the inspirations are of somebody who had became so important in their leadership roles. I also wanted to know, the critical aspects that leaders need to have in order to be able to put into their roles in their careers. I also wanted to know, especially when it came to how do you challenge people who, your higher ups, your executives, but also keeping a professional, positive relationship with them. Because that's something that I kind of struggle with. It's like, I want to have a good relationship with my mentors and everything, but I also want to be able to understand why things are happening the way they are. And it was really interesting to see what he had to say. In my leadership concepts. So when Dr. Schultz had graduated high school, he was not college ready. And by that, he had said that he did not have the great SAT, ACT scores. He, did an average job. And so that's when he enrolled in the military. While he was in Athens, Greece, he did shadow and worked with an orthodontist in Athens, Greece, and various healthcare professionals who inspired him to go back to school. So he had this natural drawback to higher education, and I believe that his true north star, his true north, is always learning. He's always learning. I think that's why he, ended up going into higher education, teaching. His natural calling is in his position right now, where he supervises 150 faculty, covers over 10,000 students, and he says that it's rewarding to oversee future healthcare leaders. He also wants his legacy to be that when he retires, he wants his students to take over. And I think that's inspiring in a way that he builds his purpose around his students and trying to make them better and try to replace him. And I think that's, even in my book, Latina Leadership Lessons, and they talk about how, people need to step back and let others lead. And especially if you are mentoring yourself, I think that's a great reason to continue going. And there's this quote that he had said that his sister, all the time I have known you, you've always been in school. And then he said, one day I'll graduate. And it was pretty cool to hear that. I've never heard something like that. And, it was really, that really is his true north. The next slide. Continuing leadership concepts. Complexity leadership is the dynamic interactions that occur in organizations as they change and evolve. Leaders in complex organizations can create conditions that enable these interactions to emerge and influence organizational behavior by managing networks and interactions. So leaders in complex leadership, they are constantly manipulating, the system. And they have control and they have power to do this by how they manage, how they put their networks, how they deal with the structure of the organization. Some leadership strategies include inclusive collaboration, inspiring engagement, developing personal adaptability, and cultivating learning agility. This is from Marion and Ulbian, 2001. Inclusive collaboration, I would interpret that as bringing everyone to the table, listening to everyone's concerns, listening to everyone's ideas, and all of that. Inspiring engagement. Not only should people come to work just to work, but also have them engaging in the environment, having them engaging in the organization, and by that we can introduce the organizational mission, values, and the vision of the organization. And that's where we can inspire the engagement. Developing personal adaptability. Leaders need to be able to adapt in changing environments. When there's a crisis, when there's a need to delegate, when there's need to put somebody else in charge, when you need to do something, when you need to own up to whatever reason. This is where that adaptability comes in play, because healthcare is ever evolving, especially when the pandemic happened. After the pandemic, healthcare has changed. Especially here in California, healthcare is always changing. We have policies changing all over us. We need leaders who are able to adapt and evolve with the changing environment. Cultivating learning agility. In order to adapt, we need to be learning. We need to constantly be aware of everything that's happening around us. There is not a time where someone is not going to stop learning. Technology is advancing by exponential rates. This is where we need to put our energy and effort into learning what's going on around us, because that's when we can put our actual effort into the organization and by doing. Traits of authentic leaders. Dr. Schultz had mentioned that a trait of an authentic leader is you need to be a good listener. You need to be patient, let others talk. And he really put in light where all the really great administrators and executives that he had learned from, they were always the last to talk. And that really resonated because, that's what I see too in my supervisors and the leaders, the executives. They ask questions. They're always building on the conversation. And by that, you need to be a good listener. The next one is circle yourself with like-minded individuals. By this, you need to surround yourself with people who can build you up, who you can build upon. You need to have people who think like you. And I think that's where you can really challenge them and they can really challenge you. And so I think that's where, that's where that collaboration comes in to play. And that's where work gets done. The next thing, match your words with your actions. Authentic leaders are able to make promises and they're able to fulfill those promises. That's where trust is built upon in leaders, because then your employees will be able to trust you. They'll be able to depend on you. That's where you're reliable and you're always going to be the backbone. The next one is have sincerity, honesty, and integrity. Even aside from the work, you need to be sincere in everything that you do, in the way that you talk to people. That's how you build relationships. Honesty. This is where you don't sugarcoat things. You be honest, but you can be honest in a professional, positive manner. And it's about the execution of how you say it that really makes a big difference. Integrity. Integrity is being honest when nobody's looking. Be truthful and don't lie. Hold your morals, hold your mission, hold your values. And when people see that, that's when, they'll support you. The last one, own up to your mistakes and hold yourself accountable. It's really, Dr. Schultz had said that in today's world, it's, you don't see that as much. And I believe that holding yourself accountable is extremely important in authentic leaders, because that means that you're self-aware in what you're doing and you can own up to it, and then you can fix it, or you can try to find the solution to fix it. Systems thinking, organizational dynamics, and change governance. It's crucial to think about systems issues holistically, as so many elements of clinical operations are integrally tied. Systems thinking is where you're thinking of the whole organization and the webs and the networks of everything. It's the dynamics. You're thinking of the feedback loops. You're thinking of how everything is impacting each other. And leadership must leverage points of change when addressing these complex systems that are pockmarked with chaos. Some will argue that small changes can create large scale differences. Others suggest that when systems are in failure or are chaotic, solutions must include more than the point of change. Again, this is talking about how systems thinking. Some people may think that one may have this ripple effect or this domino effect on upon all these other functions of the organization. And so you really need to think about how one thing can affect all this other stuff. And when there is chaos and when there is failure, you really need to look at the whole situation. You can't just fix one thing and expect it to solve the whole issue. No, sometimes you might need to fix the whole paradigm. And that's where, you know, when policies and procedures and everything come in play, because you can't just put a band-aid on a big organization. That's not how things work, and it's not how it's going to succeed. Lastly, there's always a need for critical thinking skills and creativity, and I think that's really extremely important in how you think about how things affect the organization and systems thinking. You need to have those critical thinking skills, and you need to have that creativity. If one solution does not work, you need to find another solution in order to help solve this issue. And qualities of the leaders, like we had mentioned earlier, they're always learning. Dr. Schultz, he is constantly writing research papers, and one that he's working on right now is the impact of artificial intelligence in higher education. Right now he's working on how artificial intelligence can impact PhD programs. So he's always challenging himself, and I think that really translates to us, that we must always challenge ourselves and become a lifelong learner. Another quality of leadership is servant leadership, and servant leaders are constantly fulfilling their followers' needs, their clients' needs, the stakeholders' needs. They're always putting others first. They're serving others. They're not just dictating, they're not just managing, but they're doing it in a way that's fulfilling everyone else's needs to do the job well. And by Sayati, he says that the key for the executives and change practitioners as servant leaders are those who turn the organizational chart upside down, putting the customers at the top. And the last one, extreme emphasis on altruism, simplicity, and self-awareness to have concern for others, and reducing the complexity engendered by putting personal desires in conflict with those of followers. That's Sayati from 2021. The next one, self-awareness, empathy, accountability, and ethics. The first one is to always be humble. There's always this difference between positional power versus personal power. And when it comes to positional power, it's only just the power that you have because of that position. The personal power is where you build everything that we had talked about into you, who you are as a leader and a person. And that's where you're going to have the most support and collaboration and ingenuity when it comes to your employees and those around you. Next one is apologize when wrong. Realizing that you're wrong and, stepping up and apologizing sooner than later, others will respect you for that. Dr. Schultz had said that you can't just sweep something under the rug, because then it's going to fester and it's just going to grow and grow and grow until it blows up. And then that's when it becomes an extremely big issue, to the point where it's going to it's going to impact your character. And I think that's where that self-awareness comes in, where you kind of need to realize that you made a mistake and you need to try to fix it. And Dr. Schultz always says, did I do well by others today? And what could I do better? The next one is be empathetic and put yourself in others' shoes. Realize that everyone is human. Realize that you're human. Give yourself grace, give others grace, be patient. And that's where that empathy needs to come in play, because not everyone thinks like you. So that's where you need to have that empathy, and you need to be able to give grace to those around you. The last one is be ethical. This one is where you need to be the example for the organization. Hold true to your word. Have the mission. Be ethical. Stand up for something if it needs to be stood up for. And last one, health systems and organizations. Systems thinking in healthcare means understanding not only the overall systems and how they work together, but also the subsystems that support the organization as a whole. Healthcare leaders must be able to assess when complex systems are not functioning at optimal levels, and have to be creative, critical thinking skills necessary to prevent chaos before it happens. Lastly, the overarching goal of all systems thinking should be tied to achieving the mission, vision, cultural values of the organization. This is from Hamilton, 2023.